Are you on edge? We live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of the Edge of Everyday podcast, which drops bi-monthly on all your favorite podcast platforms. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and tough talk about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. Real talk with real people that sparks provocative invitations to leap out of what's safe. Sandra Bargman, on the edge of every day. Thanks for listening.
Pressing down on you, no man has fall under pressure.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman, and welcome back to the Edge of Everyday, now streaming on all your favorite podcast platforms and at maximizeyou.life. Are you a change maker? Do you walk between worlds, between cultures, between systems? If you answered yes to any of these questions, the Edge of Every Day is the place for you. In a nutshell, this podcast is about pushing boundaries and exploring rough edges. Through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues, it's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful, those places where we are resistant to change, those places where paradox and contradicting identities live in our beliefs and in our understandings, both individually and collectively. We live in edgy, challenging times. We cannot keep looking away from the ugly, from the difficult, and silence is no longer an option. Life isn't black or white, it's both, and I want to talk about that. I want to face the tension of paradox, and I want to engage in the hard conversations. I want to explore the rough edges between our light-filled brilliance and our dark, shadowy corners. Because the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same. And that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So, thanks again for tuning in. Today, we are live in the Hive with Harriet Shugarman, a US-based university professor, multi-award-winning author, writer, economist, and climate policy advisor with many years of experience working on our climate emergency. Harriet has twice been a guest on the Edge of Everyday podcast. First, in November of 2021, you can find that conversation at talkradio.nyc or on my YouTube channel, Sandra Bargman on the Edge of Every Day. And more recently, she was a part of my two-part Mother's Day series this past May, talking about all things Mother and all things Mother Earth. That episode is streaming on all your favorite podcast platforms and again on my YouTube channel, Sandra Bargman on the Edge of Every Day. Today, we are still reeling from the catastrophic floods in Texas, with the death toll presently at 111 and another 172 people found missing. The climate crisis played a significant role in this flood. And thanks to this chaotic and incompetent administration, staffing shortages at the National Weather Service contributed to the severity of the flooding as well. Climate disaster meets climate denial. Only 30 days in, there are devastating cuts to U.S. climate research by the Trump administration. Climate.gov has been erased from the internet. Over 1,000 NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, staff have been laid off. Forecasting systems are collapsing. This is happening right now. And according to research, 77% of the global population want their governments to do whatever it takes to limit the effects of climate change. Where are we in our efforts to meet the climate crisis? How can we prepare for the growing climate instability? And most importantly, how do we hold on to hope? As Climate Mama Harriet Shugarman says, tell the truth. Actions speak louder than words, and don't be afraid. Before we welcome her in and dive in, let me share her bio. Harriet Shugarman is one of the leading voices in the global parent climate movement, the founder of Climate Mama, and the award-winning author of How to Talk to Your Kids About Climate, Turning Angst into Action. Harriet is the chair of the Advisory Council for Our Kids' Climate, an anchor organization connecting national and grassroots groups from more than 50 countries working on intergenerational organizing and engagement strategies. She is a core team member with the Psychopedia, love that, Eco-Psychopedia, love that word, can't wait to talk about that, project, a leadership council member with Dear Tomorrow, and a professor of world sustainability and climate change. Harriet worked for 13 years with the International Monetary Fund, including 10 as an IMF representative at the United Nations. Harriet is a mentor and leader with the Climate Reality Project and the recipient of the prestigious Climate Reality Alfredo Circus Memorial Green Ring Award, and is also profiled in former U.S. Vice President Al Gore's 2017 book, An Inconvenient Sequel, Truth to Power. Harriet is also a member of the We Can U.S. Women's Climate Justice Initiative Steering Committee. She lives in New York City. Welcome, Harriet.
I'm so happy to be here with you, Sandra. Thank you.
I am so happy to have you here. Thank you so, so very much. I know you're tuning in, you're visiting your mom in Canada. I'm so glad you carved out some time to have this important conversation. Just for our listeners, I when I had Harriet on with my two other friends for the Mother's Day series, right in the middle of the series, I asked Harriet, I just put her on the spot and said, will you come back on the podcast and talk about what's going on? Because it's scary. It's scary. And she agreed immediately. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And it is scary. Yeah.
Really, really scary. Oh, goodness. Before we dive into all of that, let me just remind my listeners, as I love to do, how I know my guest. I met Harriet because in 2017, when she won that prestigious award as a climate reality leader, I happened to be in the audience and I was training to become a climate reality leader myself. And Harriet was my mentor.
What?
Yes, in my hometown of Pittsburgh. And it was just wonderful to be there with what 14,000? No, not 14,000, 1,400.
1,400. Yeah.
Yeah, other people. Wouldn't it be great if it's 14,000? We're getting there.
We are.
1,400 people, all being trained by a variety, Al Gore as well as a variety of wonderful environmental educators. It was quite something. And so let's dive in with my first question that I always love to ask. And you know this, you've answered it, but what I love about this question is it can possibly change. It's the kind of question that can evolve like we evolve. So tell us, Harriet, what identity do you lead with?
I am trying more and more to identify and lead with empathy. I think that's always been there for me, but I think in these moments that we're living in together, we're not enough together, and I am trying to listen more and come from a place of understanding and empathy, and in a conscious way that maybe I haven't been as present with previously.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I just on social media posted a quote from Toni Morrison, and this is not a direct quote, but it's a good paraphrase that you have to have a, a great heart. You meet cruelty with an inhumanity towards men and women. You meet that with greater heart and soul and empathy. You don't shy away from it. You don't shut it down. You expand it. And yeah, what a beautiful reminder. The beauty. And thank you. I need to hear that myself because as you know, Harriet, I
Swing
can
the
get up,
edges
I
too.
can get
So
up on my edge of every day high horse. And, and which is not to say I don't want to be the warrior like, but I want it to be filled with humanity, filled with love, and filled with empathy. Wow. Thank you. Perfection. Okay, so let's dive in with my questions. It's hard to be hopeful in a time
Mhm.
like this with the anti-science, anti-intelligence, the chaos, the cruelty, to your point, the lack of empathy, the cruelty-driven administration that we have at this time. So I have a list here of the steps that they've taken to significantly undermine global climate environmental protection efforts. Withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, rollbacks of environmental regulations, promotion of fossil fuel extraction, increased oil and gas production, undermining scientific expertise, undermining it, throwing it off the cliff, elimination or weakening of programs, cancellation of funding for carbon capture and renewable energy initiatives. With your ear to the ground, what are some of the ways that we are standing up to these threats? And if you can speak with the coming COP30 in November, maybe speak to that globally, speak to that nationally, and perhaps even speak to that in New York State.
Right. Yes. And so I want to say in the beginning that we can't we can't put, a rosy picture on that because what you just told us um, is really upsetting, but it's not also unexpected. And I firmly believe and see the energy transition to renewables. It's happening all over the world.
Mm,
And the first thing you led with pulling out of the Paris Agreement and the UNFCCC, that's been a political potato, right? Trump pulled us out the first time, Biden put us back in. He said he was going to do that day one. That
boom.
we knew that was coming. Boom. I think the rollbacks. I believe that the Biden administration didn't speak strongly enough about how important and monumental the IRA, their climate program was, putting, over $350 billion into supporting this renewable energy
Mm,
transition. Um, and the Trump administration has pulled the rug up, with this big, ugly bill. But there will be pushback, and so that will be slower in moving off the cliff. The EPA uh, and rollbacks there. The EPA, it isn't as strong as we think it is anyways.
mm,
There's something called the endangerment finding, which is a decision that was made that greenhouse gas emissions cause, we have to stop them because they cause health problems, they endanger people. That is being they're trying to remove that. We'll see. There's a lot of pushback on that. But all to say, you know, nationally, they're doing significant damage and removing scientists, taking, as you said, climate.gov off.
gone, gone.
Right. Except that scientists and groups have saved it. It's accessible, not as easily as it was before,
Right.
but the information is there. And that happened previously too. So while all those things are terrible and we can't minimize that, California, New York, Washington, many small states in the middle. Um, they're doing a lot, and those aren't as easy to change and pull away. You talk about the COP, the Conference of the Parties, these annual UN meetings that happen in the late fall each year, where we discuss global climate negotiations. And, they also move at molasses speed because
Mhm.
whatever is decided there is usually decided ahead of time. And then if they're very formal things, have to be approved by each parliament or each Congress. And with the Paris Agreement, at the time, Obama was president, and it was structured so that each country, and the US was part of making this happen, came to that Paris Agreement, and then every 5 years. So this is an important 5-year moment coming up in Brazil, where the COP will be held in November. Countries have to report on their nationally determined contribution. The UN is filled with acronyms. As you said, I worked there for many years. I felt like all I knew was acronyms.
Totally. In
I knew
all of
it.
my research, I'm like, I can't keep track of all these.
No,
I'll let her
right.
keep track of all of them.
Exactly, exactly. And that NDC is really just a country report. What is your country
Yes.
going to do to lower your emissions and to move this energy transition forward? And so going back to 2015 to that Paris Agreement, it was purposefully done so that each country came separately. So it didn't have to go through Congress because it wouldn't have passed under Obama anyways
Right.
at that moment. We've never passed what the UN says because there's just too much. We don't want a foreign body controlling what we do in the US. So that was set up. So each country came and reported. And so we've been reporting on 5-year intervals, and then each year, some countries report. So this is an important COP for that, to see
Mm.
what other countries have done. I think February was this early winter that countries were supposed to have their reports in, and very few did by then, but
Oh,
there will be
interesting.
many, yeah, that
Mm.
will be many, not all will be in by then. I think the world is watching what's happening in the US, and they're seeing the US pull back from everything, from being leaders, whether it's in NATO or the G7, they don't trust us anymore.
Yeah.
COPs will continue. Global negotiations on climate uh, are continuing. Hopefully, we won't be at the table,
Yeah.
or the delegation that we've sent, and the last few delegation, the last three COPs have been in Poland, Azerbaijan, and the UAE
Right.
in oil company, big
Countries. Yeah.
countries,
Yeah. Big
like,
oil. Yeah. By
and we've
Ed.
been
And we're wondering why they move at molasses
Right.
speed.
Right. And we've been bringing, the fossil fuel industry has been really present in those forums too. So those forums are important for people to come together, to see each other, to talk about things. But decisions in countries, the UN can't impose anything on any country.
Right.
The big Paris Agreement, we're going to limit global warming, temperature increases to 1.5 degrees. That's our aspiration, to 2 degrees. Uh, there's nobody forcing any country to do that.
Yeah.
But there's recognition as the impacts
Well,
of climate change
well, sure.
fall.
There's been recognition, and this is, this just this plays right into that. It makes me think of that Greta Thunberg quote. I remember hearing it, just this frustration of why can't we stop? If globally we agree that this is happening, why are we not moving forward?
Right. And
Di-
when
In,
you have,
in,
yeah, no,
yeah,
you have a 16-year-old like she was at the time, or 17-year-old say that, or a young person
screaming.
the power in that direct
I want
way.
to read that. I want to read her quote. Adults
Yeah.
keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope, but I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if the house is on fire, because it is.
Yeah.
Ah, Yeah, and I remember, yes, why do we continue to drag our feet? Are you going
And
to the COP? Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
What?
no, I was gonna say to your, about this administration that's turned science upside down, right? They've just invite, as you said, let go of all those people that were working on our COP plans on we do our own national, how is the US doing, that we are required to report to Congress on that. They've brought on three scientists that are climate deniers, so
Deniers. I know.
yeah. So, so this government has turned that whole thing upside down. So we don't want them at the table. They don't, hopefully, and something that the UN has never had is subnational governments, formal, because the UN is made up of 191 or however many countries are in the world, government
Mm,
orgs. But maybe this will change and we'll start letting California in, which is, if this is it the sixth or 10th largest economy in the world,
yeah.
somewhere up there if it was a country. So, and what's happening, around our country in many places is really promising and really hopeful. And industry knows it too. Um,
Mm,
but not to minimize the damage this recent bill is doing in terms of subsidies to support renewable energy. But many renewable energy companies say just level the playing field. We can do it. So take the subsidies away from the fossil fuel companies, stop giving them tax grants. But this, again, this government is doing a lot of damage, but there's a
yeah.
lot of good happening, moving already in that direction. And China's going to overtake, take us. Uh, India,
Yeah.
Brazil, all of them are moving forward at very lightning speed, and we'll be left behind in many ways.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Will be. Are.
Are, yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you. I mean, I love that she says, I don't want to, you want your hope, I want your panic. But, I remember this when we were training in Pittsburgh with that particular group for climate reality training. And much of the conversation and much of the teachings being around how do you give the message without overwhelming
Hmm.
and keeping, not shutting people down, keeping people hopeful, but, finding that balance of hope and inspiration and taking action because you got to have hope to, if you don't have any hope, you're not going to take any action. But, you know, but yet get way more fired up than just hopeful, like
Hmm.
that edge of a little bit of panic. And and I've had this conversation with, and I know that Chantal
Hmm.
Bilodeau of Arts and Climate Initiative, and I've done a show with her as well for our listeners,
Hmm.
um, about the power of storytelling with getting people engaged through the arts and through storytelling. So let's make that move to um, I have a wonderful note here. How can we promote public awareness and engagement on climate change issues? Why are we so ineffective? So talk to us about the work that you're doing in Dear Tomorrow and in Our Kids Climate. Tell us about those organizations and how storytelling is a big part of your work with kids,
Yeah, thank you. And with kids, but also with
with
parents
adults.
and the people that are there wondering what their children or children's of the world future is going to be. And there, just to premise it too, there was this a number of studies, but a study that came out by Potential Energy and Yale Climate Communications in November 23, and it did a big study, 60,000 people in 23 countries around the world, and what drives them to want their governments to take climate action, and it's our future, hope for our children's future, not the economy, not
Mhm.
many other things, and so I do. Firmly believe that the importance of sharing narrative storytelling, that provide a hopeful future, that we look into the future and see that what we did now, we are good ancestors. How can we be good
Mhm.
ancestors?
Mm.
So our kids' climate, as you shared in the beginning, we're really a network organization. We support intergenerational parent, grandparent. We work with some youth organizations around the world and lift up their stories, share their stories of the work they're doing on climate action at the local level, at whatever level they want to share. We share stories on our website. We have a fellowship program. We're now in our fourth year. We had fellows from over 40 countries. We support them for a year on local projects that they're working on. And
Mm.
then we're building an alumni network there. We have a small grants program where we provide uh, up to $5,000 for projects and we're in over 50 countries. And there's amazing things happen. And what we hope we can help do is that we don't have to, we don't need to have the wheel recreated every time, that we can learn from each other. And whether you're in Vietnam or in Poland or in South Africa, that there are similarities in terms
Mm.
of what we're doing at the grassroots level. So we work with these amazing parents, grandparents, people that are concerned about intergenerational impacts of the climate crisis and share their stories. And then we do some things together. We um, do campaigns that then we share out into the community. So you talk about the importance of art. We worked with some amazing illustrators from around the world, and then also had just individuals, kids, parents. We had an Our Other Mother campaign. So if you look up that hashtag Our Other Mother and launch that, and share, people did art shows, they did all kinds of um, drama around it, just storytelling on why we need to protect our other mother as well. We have
Mm.
a Our Kids Air campaign right now about the importance of clean air and air that our children breathe, the climate pollution that pollutes our bodies, but little bodies way worse. And then those are epigenerational sometimes, the
Mhm.
impacts, the health impacts. So that's, Our Kids Climate. Dear Tomorrow is based in the US, but does work globally too. It's a legacy storytelling organization that helps people write letters to someone in the future, to
Ah.
themselves, to their child. It's into 2050. And what do you want to see? And I have to say, I've used that with my college. You mentioned that where when I teach, and I had a unit this last semester on climate emotions, and uh,
Mm.
so we did our climate stories, personal ones, as well as writing a letter. And many of them chose to write to themselves in the future, which was
Oh.
really interesting and told me how powerful that was. So, Dear Tomorrow is, that's the basis of the organization, how it started, and it has a deep archive of close to 5,000 letters, I think now. But we also do workshops on how to bring that into the community, and we've
Yes.
had um, people reach out to their government officials. People do dance performances around this. We do museum installations, sound,
Wow.
sound and visuals, and so we've done those in the UK. And yeah, so and again, these are small organizations with small staff, but they're really doing amazing things. And those are just a couple examples of many different kinds. Um, you mentioned the Arts and Climate organization that
Initiative. Yeah.
Chantal has,
Mm.
and there's there's
There's many,
thousands of,
many. Yes.
yeah,
Well, and getting people connected. What I love about what was the first one?
Our Kids Climate.
Our Kids Climate, yes. All of a sudden weekend popped into my head. Our Kids Climate. What I love about that is the learning, the global learning of,
Mhm.
so the young people and their parents and their grandparents are learning about we haven't seen the displacement in the United States in the same way that it's happening around the world. And we're just getting into the awful flooding and the fires, but we haven't seen the the diaspora that's beginning, that's having to happen, and people needing to move away from where they've lived forever. So to be able to learn about that
Mhm.
and to be connected in that way, young people being connected with young people around the world, learning. Do you find that there's are you the older has their involvement in these organizations moved them into maybe wanting to do this in a professional way or in a bigger way? Do you
Yes,
see that?
I do see that. And I also, I know we'll talk about it later about work on climate education and how does that fit its role into schools, both formally, but
Mm.
also in these informal settings that we're working with these groups through our kids' climate. And whatever it is that you do, as an actor, as an engineer, as a plumber, as a carpenter, if you can see that through a lens of these climate impacts that are going to be with us for the rest of our lives and, you know, for hundreds of years to come, how can we be part of the solutions or building resiliency or building is it hope, but actually practically, how are we preparing
Yeah,
for
exactly.
that?
Building
Are we getting
community. Mhm.
exactly building community, but building growing seeds that can withstand harsh weather? How do we make sure we have clean water to drink? How all the things, not as people are preppers when we hear that, but
Yeah.
how do we practically,
Like
all of our
genuine practically
yeah
prepare,
yeah
not the
uh,
preppers. No, I
yeah
don't need canned beans.
no
Yeah.
yeah. So
How
I
do we
do see
get back
that. And
to,
yeah, and that brings hope and that brings a feeling of I'm part of the solution. I'm part of, again, we're not solving climate crisis. You and I know that. I mean, it's
yeah,
here with us, but how can we
how are we
move
meeting the
through it?
devastation? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Um,
and and well, I mean, listen, I'd love to see. Sure, we're not going to stop it, but with certain changes, things might not get as bad as they potentially
Absolutely.
could. But yes, you're right. It is totally happening. We have. So when do they think that it's the point of no return fully?
Yeah.
What's the year that they're thinking?
Right. I don't think, and I think we can't do that. We can't set here's the year. We're
Yeah,
passing,
you
we're
answered that
passing,
beautifully. That's
yeah, we're
exactly.
passing tipping points though, right? We
Yes,
are.
exactly. This is
Yeah.
cracks me up. I was like, are you kidding me? When's the tipping point? Come on.
Yeah.
Like
But
anyone really knows.
yeah, but I think to your point, what scientists now tell us, which is, different than what I was told 15 or 20 years ago, and I think it's because of how we move forward with climate modeling, et cetera, but
Mm.
is that actually if, and this is a big if and a big heart, if we had zero emissions, right? Which if we could do that,
We
we
could
have
do
the
that.
technology
We
now,
we
we
have the
could,
technology, but we just
as you
refuse
said,
to
we
do it.
just don't. But if we
No.
did, that the planet, it always wants to be in balance, right? We put her out of balance, right? She's in equilibrium. She's fighting to be, in balance because we live in this just Goldilocks place. And if we could stop the greenhouse gas emissions, that the planet in 3 to 5 years would level off. It's not, it's in, and
Yeah.
then it would start, over time the temperature, we would get back in balance. And
Yeah.
so it's not thousands of years of continuing devastation, but that if and that accomplishment will require us all to come together to do
Oh,
that. Yeah.
well, it's funny. I think every time I just want to scream and yell at them while I'm doom scrolling,
Mhm.
I lift up to more of a bird's eye view, more of a spirit-filled view, and I think, you know, maybe this hideousness is going to help us get back. Is going to be the final thing that really incites people to really start to do the work and make the choices and see the better future and create it.
I think that's an amazing thing to hold on to. And maybe, that is the transition that we're moving through. And I love how you put it, Sandra. Yeah.
Mm. Oh my. So, climate grief and mental health. Another happy topic. Um, yeah, so I love this ecocyclopedia, and the name.
The
I'll
name
let you
is,
tell the name. I have it right here, but I'll let you tell. The name is so
yeah.
great, ecocyclopedia.
We've realized that actually people can't spell it. It's hard to find us on the web. So and people stumble over it. What is this? And the idea was it was an encyclopedia of the eco and the social, the
Uh-huh.
mental health. And we were going to create a Wikipedia of the connections between climate and mental health. However, bad name. So in
Oh,
fact,
and I only practiced it like a million times, like a
yeah,
good
no,
voiceover artist.
yeah. We are going to actually have an umbrella site that's called Climate Junction, easier.
All
And
right.
a
I'm a
couple different,
junction.
yeah,
Mhm.
couple different resources, including the Ecocyclopedia, which I would, uh, suggest to your listeners to
Mm,
have a look at it. We're growing it. It's uh, There are entries that are digestible and readable by anyone, not
quite
only
something.
for mental health professionals, but for anyone that want to find the link between certain subjects and mental health. We are a project of the Climate Psychiatry Alliance and the Climate
Mm,
Psychology Alliance of North America. So those are two organizations that have formed probably in the last 7, 8 years to bring professionals together and to bring this issue to the forefront. And in fact, with
mm.
Ecocyclopedia, those two groups and a number of other ones, we are coming together. We're meeting every other week, actually, to bring uh, to work towards getting bigger funding for all of these different groups, the Climate Mental Health Network. There are many. Dear Tomorrow is one of those as well, so that we can help people see that profession exists. It's really important as we move through these terrible climate impacts. People in Texas, you were talking about them earlier on. More than 100 people have died, close to 200 are missing.
Missing.
Yeah, so you get over the immediate of it, but then how do you live with that? Every time it rains or
Hmm.
you
The
lost someone.
anxiety.
Yeah, and to understand that it wasn't just a bad rainstorm, it's part of what's happening, and to help people. I think at our climate reality trainings, I think Al Gore calls the climate crisis a threat multiplier, and it makes everything worse. And so, if, being concerned about climate change, everyone should, feeling grief, sadness. There's a wonderful climate wheel of emotions that the Climate Mental Health Network has on its website that's free, that's up there. We need to have
Mm,
words to express that. But like anything else, if we don't deal with that grief and that emotion, it can create actually health problems and mental health
yeah.
problems. And so we need professionals that can help people understand as well that it's not a psychosis, it's a normal reaction to a terrible, awful, tragic situation, maybe, or just concern and feelings about what you see around you. So I'm excited to be working. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm an economist, as you said, but I've done a lot of work in this space, and we did I put in my book as well, the early discussions about mental health and climate. So I get to work with amazing people, not just in the US, but around the world that are professionals working in this space. And so we're trying to tell that story, get it out there, get it properly funded so that because the need is only going to grow exponentially.
Yeah, indeed. So how are you how does let this is a great seg into your book, Climate Anxiety, Talking with Kids. How are you using this in all of the teachings as a professor in your teachings with young people, as well as how it shows up in your book? Speak to us about that.
Yeah, you said those three very simple things that whether it's climate or something else that we um, teach our taught probably by, our parents are growing up, but and we, then share out, tell the truth, actions speak louder than words, and don't be afraid. And I think when we put those, we are seeing from the president of the United States down, people lie to us, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and
And people
so
seem to be okay with that.
yeah, and so how do we keep that straight and narrow? And so where are we getting our information and our who are the scientists? Where's the overwhelming consensus on what's happening on the climate crisis? Not just
Yeah.
one, two, or three, and it ends up being the same one, two, or three, right?
Can I
Actions
can
speak.
I interrupt you?
Yeah,
Can I interrupt
sure.
you? Do you because I want to ask about, do you know where, you mentioned that they had saved all the information from climate.gov, and I read that as well, but where would we access those? Where
Yeah.
is where is this information? Is in much the same way as we're feeling that the media has been bought and is not sharing on many topics. How are you feeling about how the media is covering climate crises and disasters? And is there, in much the same way, sort of independent journalists creating Substacks or places where we can find, where all this information is organized in a way where you can access it quickly and concisely?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you some resources now. I'll share them, and then I will send you so you could put in the show notes where to find the data from climate.gov, because I can't think off the top.
Oh, it's
And
wonderful.
that's
Yeah, great,
and
terrific.
that's also problematic, right? That you can't easily go there to get it. But I will get that to you. There's wonderful investigative reporting done out of a group called Inside Climate, that has
Mm.
great resources on climate. I mentioned the Yale Climate Communications project. It's done with George Mason University, and they have, I think it goes back 15 years or more on. It started just in the US, sort of the six Americas, how people think differently about climate, but they've gone into really deep understanding. You can look at your county where you live in the state, in any state, and sort of see how people answer and think differently about climate. That's more on the social, emotional feelings around climate. They've now branched into different locations internationally. And so it's a really great resource to understand that, in fact, people want governments to take action on climate. They actually want renewable energy. They want their kids to learn about climate change, whether they're Republican, Democrat, or independent. So I would, highly recommend that source so that you can cut through the noise. And it's, multiple, decades of surveys that show that continues in that way. You're right. The legacy media or big media, are they reporting on this? More and more, I think, well, the connections, as you mentioned in the beginning, with the flood, with the cuts to the current cuts to NOAA, to weather reporting, but that also goes back, you know, also maybe a decade too, to say, because we haven't funded FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, not just this administration. And it wasn't the administration before necessarily fault. Congress hasn't properly funded it. So the easy way out is to say, okay, like this administration is doing with everything, let the state pay for it, let the
Right.
county pay for it, let the city pay for it. Well, they don't have money
Good
to pay for
money.
disasters. So we have to figure that out. But, there's universities. Michael Mann is at UPenn now.
Mm.
He has a department there that's doing really strong work. Catherine Hayhoe and her various newsletters and shows, she's a climate scientist from Texas, or originally from Canada. She's Canadian too, but works out of Texas. And makes wonderful videos you can share with your kids, all fact-based, science-based. There's wonderful, like actually a plethora of learning of curriculum, or not, of just things teachers can grab online. There's a group called Subject to Climate that has lesson plans for teachers. And we launched in New York a New York State Climate Hub. So teachers can go there. It's good for parents too, or if you're homeschooling your kid. Um, there are lesson plans that are fact-based and checked before they're put out there. There's so much great information. As you said, though, how do you find it and where is it? That The
Well, thank
Guardian
you.
is a good. and then I'm going to stop. But
Oh
that's a good,
no.
I do good reporting on climate, I would say probably is one of the,
Oh,
bigger
that's great to know.
spaces.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, so I interjected to get all of those things, but before you got to speak about your book and your teaching, and I want to absolutely plug that book.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's already, I think in many ways it's evergreen. It came out
Hmm.
in 2020. I go back to it and have people tell me they use it actually in their classes as a teaching tool, having their students read it. That's in some college classes. And I've done workshops with teachers and we give it out to teachers and people tell me they reference it a lot. So I do think much of the information in it is evergreen. I talk about
Hmm.
different age groups, and because you would talk differently for sure to a 3-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, or to your 30-year-old child if you have one that maybe thinks differently than you do. So there's examples in there about that. The understanding and knowledge that we have known what we've been doing for since the late 1800s. Scientists, even back then, have known the link between the burning of fossil fuels and an increase in greenhouse gases and changes of temperature. So we talk about that, talk about the politics a little bit, about hope, different kinds of hope. There's hope in a vacuum. Means nothing, right? But Joanna Macy, who's such a special lady, who's actually in her last days
Blessed,
now,
yes.
a philosopher from Oregon who is wonderful. If you
Yeah,
read her, you'll know.
yes, highly recommend. Go watch her videos, read her books.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So she talks about hope that you can renew on like a hope that's like something you have to work at. It's like Tai Chi, right? It's something you or whatever it is that you do. It requires work to work on it.
Practice. Mm.
Practice. Yes, yes. There's hope when there is no hope. There's studies of indigenous populations, First Nations people, when everything was destroyed. How do they hope? Or there's hope,
Mm.
many different kinds of hope. So I think we have to also put that into perspective. I try to do that in the book as well. Um, yeah, and I use other people's voices and stories because, as you started, right, narratives and storytelling are really important. And we all come at things from different ways in different spaces and places. Talk a little bit about climate justice. The climate crisis impacts us all, but it absolutely doesn't impact us all directly. You
Same
spoke,
way.
yeah. So, yeah, those are some of the things in the book. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, yes. And the title of that book?
How to talk to your kids about climate change, turning angst into action.
And you can find that on your website,
Yes, you can find it on Amazon,
Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
Barnes and
and
Noble.
your website is climatemama.com.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and your favorite bookstore can order it too.
Yeah.
So
Totally. Of course, I'm inclined to always say, don't get it from Amazon. And particularly, I mean, oh, this is a perfect moment. Not that we need to go down this rabbit hole, but just the
here,
wedding
yes.
of
Oh my God.
oh, and the yachts and the this and what's her? I have it here. The name of her Bezos Earth Fund. And the charity work for reputation laundering. It's just mind numbing.
It
Mind
is.
numbing. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to show up in my $500 million um, CO2 emitting yacht. Just me and my husband to be in my little staff. And then I'm going to do all my charitable work for the climate. Yeah. As you can tell, listeners, we're not pleased with that or impressed. So I'm going to say it. Don't buy it from Amazon unless you absolutely have
Fair
to.
enough. Fair enough.
Yes.
Right.
Well, we are at the end of our time together. And of course, I have a million more questions, as I always do. And I am so ever grateful for you coming back on the show and sharing what's happening now and getting us up to speed and giving us resources and helping us to reconnect with our hope.
Thank you, Sandra, and thank you for your work and for pushing at the edges and helping everyone see the many different sides, and that we need to confront these things head on, and that there are so many things that are happening, and making sure to point those out too, and not to, not you're calling it out too. We need to tell the truth, and
You need
you're a
to,
truth
yeah.
teller. Thank you for being a truth teller.
Oh, thank you. That's a great compliment. That is the edge of every day. So, is there any last words you want to say to our listeners before we sign off? Any last words of wisdom that you can share? Have you frozen?
We just
Uh-oh. She froze.
my back.
There you are. You're back.
I'm so sorry. I'm in
That's all
rural
right.
Alberta. No, yeah, we waited till the end. No, I would just say it is angst provoking. It is depressing. It is upsetting what's happening, and we can't be frozen. And each of us, there's some of us that can do really big things, but most of us can't, and we can do little things around the edges. And we need to continue to do those. And so find your place, and you're in this, and push back, and call it out when you see it. And it isn't okay what's happening. So please don't be frozen. That's it.
Yes. Brilliant. Small steps. Everyone can contribute. Everyone has a voice. Every single one. And this makes me, I'm going to read this quote from former US Vice President Al Gore. Believe in the power of your own voice. The more noise you make, the more accountability you demand from your leaders, the more our world will change for the better.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you so much again, Harriet.
Thank
Truly
you.
grateful. And to my listeners, I thank you for spending this time with us. Remember, you are always at the edge of the miraculous. Till we speak again, take good care.
Pressing down on you, no man has fall under pressure.